Greetings, my fellow beings. My name is Amanda, and today we are going to be reacting to a episode of Mystery Diagnosis called Like Mother, Like Son. And it has to do with celiac disease. And if you don't know, I have celiac disease, and so I wanted to react to this episode about celiac disease and see how accurate it is. I know it's going to be pretty accurate because it is a first-person story about celiac disease, but you know, TV shows like to put a lot of fancy schmancy stuff in it, and I just wanted to see how accurate it was, and I wanted you to come along with me for the ride because it would be fun to watch this episode of Mystery Diagnosis. So let's get started watching this episode.
Ready to be a mom?
Mommy's
Ready to be a mom again.
In 1996, the Murphy family was excited by the prospect of a new baby.
What should we call the girl if it's a girl?
Catherine.
We ended up having this adorable little baby boy, Eamon, and he was born July 2nd, 96.
Eamon Charles
Murphy. And he's our little baby.
Everyone in my family thought it was going to be a girl, but Eamon obviously didn't come out as a girl. Oh, you're a beautiful...
I was supposed to come out as a boy, so surprise!
little boy.
Someone once remarked that our kids look like they come from the same catalog, and Eamon fit right in there with them.
But 3 months later, Lisa noticed something was wrong with Eamon.
At that age, babies, their eyes typically track, and he wasn't. And I remember just being hysterical because I thought, you know what, I don't think he can see. So I took him to a doctor, and I remember while the physician was doing all these little eye tests with him, he accidentally dropped one of his instruments, and it hit the metal chair and made this unbelievable loud sound. And Eamon never flinched. And he kind of joked with me. He said, "Are you really here for his eyes, or do you think maybe his hearing? Maybe he can't hear?"
Lisa was upset, but I wasn't that concerned about his health. I feel every kid is different. Every kid develops differently.
Eamon's hearing was eventually tested, and the results were normal.
So the thing with celiac disease is that it can affect every part of your body, and so you can have some really interesting and weird symptoms and not know that it has to do with celiac disease. And that's why it takes so long for people to be diagnosed with celiac disease, because symptoms individually are so different for each person. And so the fact that he's not hearing very well, he's not seeing very well, you know, it doesn't scream celiac disease, but it can affect your eyesight, it can affect your hearing, it can affect every part of your body. It just depends on the individual.
I was happy to hear that, but I thought, you know what? I really want an answer. I'm going to find out. There's got to be something. There's something more than, you know, more to this than meets the eye.
Frustrated with Eamon's doctors, Lisa began to look elsewhere for help.
My sister-in-law, Marjorie, is a physical therapist, and she would have discussions with my wife, Lisa, and they would talk about, you know, where Eamon is and where he should be.
I really noticed that there were problems when Eamon was a year at his first birthday party. And Lisa had said to me, you know, when he's eating the solid food, he wasn't chewing well.
He would cram all of the cupcake in his mouth, but it would get so packed. I mean, he would just pack it, and then he wouldn't chew, and then he would end up, he'd open his mouth, and half of it would fall out again.
And there was kind of a deadness to the area around his lips and inside his mouth that we definitely took note of.
For the next year and a half, Eamon kept missing developmental milestones. He was slow to walk and talk.
We realized he definitely was not where he should be. We were looking for an answer, and we weren't getting it.
I mean, it's just a crucial time. It's those first 3 years, as far as developmentally, it's the most important years.
Eamon turned 3 in 1999, and despite his setbacks, it was now time for him to start nursery school.
When all my other kids went off to nursery school, it was such a joyful time, and it was fun, and it was happy.
And when he went into school, it was tough because we saw really how far behind he was, and it became more apparent to both Lisa and I.
He should have been able to do whatever me, my brother, and my sister did, but I guess I just knew that he wouldn't have that opportunity. He would have to work even harder than we did to fit in normally.
See, and that's the thing with child onset celiac disease, when you first have it when you're born, is that it can cause developmental issues, which can be very scary for any parent because you don't know what's going on, and it's not the first thing on the radar for doctors to be like, oh, your kid has celiac disease, put them on a gluten-free diet. And so it can be excruciatingly scary for any parent to not know what's going on with their child. And it doesn't matter what the condition is, it can be very scary. And I feel for these parents, because to see your child lagging behind and you know that they should be at a certain milestone but they're not, and you don't know what's wrong, that is horrendous, and I really feel for them.
Several months, half the year, we didn't see much improvement in Eamon.
Eamon's developmental problems had Lisa scared, but then she noticed something new that absolutely terrified her.
When Eamon was 3.5, I noticed he'd be playing in the family room, and then he would be in the middle of like a little make-believe game, you know, with his little soldiers or whatever, and he would stop, and his eyes would kind of glaze over, his mouth would move, but he wouldn't be saying anything.
He would kind of rock back and forth and make this sound from the back of his throat. He was spacing out, basically.
You could go up in front of him and wave your hand at him, and he was not really responding. And it was almost like he was having a conversation with himself.
I was the one who probably saw most of these episodes. You know, I'd tell the doctors they never witnessed anything. And I remember my sister-in-law Marjorie saying,
why don't you videotape it? This way you have it documented, what's going on, and let the doctors look at it.
So this is really important. If you have any condition that is reoccurring but it doesn't seem to be happening in front of a doctor, record it. I know for myself, I have recorded many things that have been going on with me and have shown them to the doctor, and then they're able to determine what's going on from there. But me just describing it doesn't really help in any way. I remember having an intense twitch in my thumb that made my entire thumb move insanely, but of course every time I went to the doctor it never did it. Of course it didn't. But I remember recording it, and I've had a lot of other symptoms that I would record and show to a doctor later on. So if you do have anything that is concerning that you want to be diagnosed with a doctor, but it doesn't ever happen in front of the doctor, because I swear it never happens in front of a doctor, record it. That is very important. Doesn't matter if it's your kid, doesn't matter if it's yourself, it doesn't matter if it's your sibling. Record it so that doctors can see what's going on.
A week later, the whole family was driving in the car, and Lisa was ready.
All of a sudden, I hear this clicking noise in the back seat. So I thought, this is my chance. I turned around and I started filming Eamon from the back seat.
He was looking out the window, and his mouth was moving, and his eyes had a kind of a vacant look.
And I'm talking to him, calling his name, and I actually had to reach over and pat his knee. And then all of a sudden, he snaps to, he kind of looks in my direction, and then he gives this big smile for the camera.
Are you okay?
I watched the tape, and it was distressing. That was the first time I had really seen it, and shook me up.
Eamon Murphy was an adorable 3-year-old with a loving family. But despite all the attention, Eamon was in a downward spiral. At 1, he had problems eating. At 2, he wasn't talking. And now he's having trance-like episodes that no one can explain.
These things are getting worse and worse. I'm kind of at my wit's end. This is it. I really need to find out what's going on with them.
Armed with a videotape of Eamon's episodes, Lisa visited a pediatric neurologist.
He was looking at the tapes and looking at his records, and he felt that Eamon may have some type of seizure disorder.
When I was being checked over for celiac disease, it was the same thing where I was being sent to a neurologist. I was being sent to all kinds of specialists to try and figure out what was wrong, because they thought that I had all kinds of different illnesses going on with me, because it was affecting my entire body, mostly my stomach and GI tract, but everything else, like I couldn't move, I couldn't turn my head, I was getting headaches all the time. I had extreme fatigue, just all these other things that were going along with it, body aches, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and so I was being sent to specialist after specialist after specialist, and it took years for me to get a diagnosis. So I understand completely that, you know, this young boy is 3 now and they still don't know what's wrong with him, and unfortunately that doesn't surprise me very much.
We ran a few tests, and he said, I think, you know, they're partial complex seizures, and I think that we should put him on some anti-seizure medication.
But many seizure medications are powerful drugs with serious side effects.
And I thought, you know, should I be giving him this medication? I mean, this would have been like the easy way out. Just start him on the medication and see what happens and hope for the best. But I just didn't feel good about it.
She just had a gut feeling that, you know, we're not going to medicate Eamon until we really know what's causing these seizures.
After 4 years of searching, Lisa still didn't feel any closer to the truth, but she kept on looking for clues.
I read this article on parents putting their children on gluten-free and casein-free diets.
This rang a bell. Lisa herself was on a gluten-free diet because she had been diagnosed with something called celiac disease.
Basically, it's the inability to digest gluten. Gluten is a protein that's found in wheat, rye, barley, and oats.
She was addicted to pretzels and cornflakes, and she would eat them all the time, but she was getting really, really thin, and she was getting really sick.
When I was diagnosed with celiac disease, that was the first question to my doctor. I said, what about my children? And I remember my doctor just kind of laughing and saying, oh, forget it. You know, celiac disease is so rare. Your kids, and even if your kids do get it, you'll know immediately, because they'll have the exact same GI symptoms that you've experienced.
Eamon had none of the digestion problems that Lisa suffered from, so the idea that they might share the same disease seemed far-fetched. But then Lisa learned some shocking news.
I attended a Westchester Celiac Support Group meeting. Dr. Peter Green was going to be speaking, and I was very, very interested in what he had to say on celiac disease.
Physicians in this country, at least, are taught that celiac disease is a rare condition. It's actually very common. It occurs in about 1% of the population, and it actually occurs in families.
So I'm not going to pretend that I know more than this guy, because obviously he is an expert in it, so I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, that's correct. But he is correct. It is actually found in 1% of the population. They're finding that it probably happens more often because tests are becoming more accurate, and they're able to find it more, and it is genetic. A lot of the times it is genetic. Sometimes it can be a fluke and just happen in individuals, but they have found that it is genetic, and the likelihood of you having someone related to you with celiac disease is very high. I'm pretty sure that my mother has it. Will she admit that she has it? No. I'm pretty sure that my sister has it, but I'm pretty sure that my grandfather has it as well, but he's not going to admit it to anybody because he doesn't want to go on a gluten-free diet. So, you know, I'm pretty sure that most of my mother's side has it, but no one's going to admit to it. But it is genetic, and if someone you're related to has it and you're having issues, get tested for it. I highly suggest getting tested for it if someone you're related to has it and you're suffering from different kinds of symptoms that you don't really know what they are.
Peter Green kept stressing how important it was to have all first-degree relatives tested. I remember just freezing in my seat thinking, it's genetic?
Desperate for answers, Lisa approached Dr. Green and asked him what she should do.
She was totally unaware that there could be an impact of this on her family. We were running a family screening study looking at at-risk individuals.
I was immediately of the opinion, when can we do it? Let's do it now.
So we drew blood on Lisa's children as part of this study.
In celiac disease, gluten destroys the tiny finger-like protrusions in the small intestine called villi that help the body absorb nutrients. Sufferers usually experience stomach aches and other GI symptoms, not the strange trances that have been plaguing Eamon. Still, Lisa began to wonder, could malnutrition be at the root of Eamon's problems?
I'm kind of on pins and needles because I just don't really know what's in store for me and what's going to happen.
3 weeks after their meeting, Dr. Green completed the first set of tests.
Eamon's results were very high, indicating that it was virtually 100% chance that he had celiac disease.
So the thing with celiac disease is that because it destroys the villi inside your small intestine, you can't absorb nutrients. So even if you're eating a ton of food, you're not absorbing any of that nutrients, and so you end up suffering from malnutrition. So when I talk about that celiac disease could kill me if I eat wheat, barley, rye, sometimes oats, I'm not joking. It would take a while, but it could kill me. And malnutrition is one of the highest things that could potentially happen if you are eating a gluten-filled diet while you have celiac disease.
An endoscopy confirmed the diagnosis.
And I remember just hugging Bob, and I started to cry, of course. And I thought, thank God, this is over with. It's done. This is it. We finally solved the mystery.
Looking back, Lisa was horrified by the cost of her ignorance.
You know, as a mom, you want to give your kids the best nutritional foods available. And I remember giving Eamon whole grains and cereals, and it's just, in essence, I was actually poisoning Eamon. I was giving him poison.
After the diagnosis, Lisa quickly placed Eamon on a diet free of wheat and all other gluten-filled foods. It was a huge life change, but the results were striking.
It's getting harder and harder in this day and age to take wheat out of what you eat because they tend to put it in many things.
Yeah. I call it the gluten fairy, because there are things that you're like, there shouldn't be any wheat in this, and it's just sprinkled in there. And it's true. It's really hard to find foods that don't have it, but it is getting more common to find gluten-free foods because more and more people are being diagnosed with it. And there's also the fad dieters that think that it's healthy to eat gluten-free. It's not, in case you're wondering. Unless you have to eat gluten-free, it's not healthy to eat gluten-free. So take my 2 cents, run with it. But so you can find gluten-free foods that are available now, whereas when this little boy was being diagnosed, that it wasn't very common to find gluten-free foods. And so nowadays you can find a lot of gluten-free foods, but you would be amazed at what wheat sneaks into in all kinds of foods that you're like, no, there couldn't possibly be any wheat in this, and there is.
but it's a condition that you actually don't need to take any medication for and has the potential to totally reverse with changing your diet.
After Eamon went on a gluten-free diet, the seizures stopped almost immediately.
He just came to life. His eyes sparkled, he was alert. It was incredible.
If he hadn't got a diagnosis of celiac disease, it's easy to imagine that he could have progressed rapidly even further. So 4 years later, one would think that he just might become totally incapacitated.
Picture eating food and not absorbing any of the vitamins. And that's what this does. So the potential is limitless in terms of what it could do to him.
At a critical point in his development, celiac had robbed Eamon's brain of nutrients, causing cognitive delays and seizures. But why had it taken 4 years to get diagnosed?
Eamon had an atypical presentation. Typically, celiac disease, the way it's taught, is that it's a diarrhea-predominant illness.
There's no, bloated stomach, no distended abdomen, nothing.
His clinical presentation didn't trigger any connection to the disease.
It's so underdiagnosed, I can't even begin. You feel like just screaming sometimes.
Eamon is 8 today, and he's absolutely fabulous. He's so cute, and he's so spunky.
No one would look at Eamon and say there's anything different about him than any other 8-year-old.
He's getting hundreds on his math tests and spelling tests every week without fail.
He's doing great.
No one knows your child better than you do. I mean, a physician, they know the diseases, they know how to prescribe medicines, but they really also have to listen to what the mother's saying about a child. They have to put, it's like a puzzle, they have to put all the pieces together.
Yeah, so that's one of the big things, is that you need to listen to parents, you need to listen to the patients. When they're saying that something is wrong, it's really important to listen to what they're saying and not pretend that it's not actually happening. Because I was told multiple times that it must just be in my head, I must be just overreacting, I must just be anxious or having anxiety. So it's really important to listen to the parents of patients and also the patients themselves. It is very important. And the other thing about celiac disease is that it doesn't have to just be gastrointestinal issues. It can be a whole myriad of different things. So just because you don't have pain in your gut or have diarrhea or have the normal gastrointestinal issues that come with celiac disease does not mean that you don't have it. So if you are in fear of having it, get tested for it. Make sure that you don't. But like I said, if you do have celiac disease, make sure you stay on your gluten-free diet, because it can cause all kinds of problems, such as cancer. It can cause malnutrition. It can cause seizures. It can cause all kinds of havoc on your body. So make sure that you stay on your gluten-free diet if you have celiac disease, or if you're gluten intolerant. Those are two separate things, but if you're gluten intolerant, also be on a gluten-free diet. Other than that, eat gluten. It's healthy for you. Okay? So that was my reacting to Mystery Diagnosis, and I hope that you enjoyed that episode. It is an older one, but it was in my lifetime, so it's not that old. I'm not that old. So I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something from it, or you just found entertainment in it. But hopefully you learned something new and you know more about why people eat gluten-free, because it is something that happens more and more frequently nowadays. So if you enjoyed this video, or you just want to support this channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and go ahead and click that like button if you did enjoy this video. Remember to be kind. Kindness is free, so give it out to everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.